Anoint me afresh from the crown of my head to the sole of my feet, that I might not preach a good sermon, but a sermon that does some good. The grass withers and the flower fades, but your word remains forever. Amen. One of the things that we learn in life often is that you can't trust everybody. Even people who seem like they have your back will often turn on you. I learned this at an early age. I remember me and my brother were in Germany. My dad was in the military, and we had traveled back to South Carolina to visit family. When we came back to South Carolina, my uncle had this new invention called a Nintendo. All right. And so he had one, and we were watching as he was playing Super Mario Brothers. Now, in 1989, this was high-tech technology, right? Because if you wanted to play video games before, you had to go where? To the arcade. And so we were at the house, and they allow us finally to get a chance to get on the Nintendo. And I remember my cousin, who had surgery this week, was telling me, he said, hey, if you jump in that hole right there, it'll take you to another world. Those of you who never play Mario know that the holes kill you. And so I jumped in the hole, and sure enough, I had lost a life. And he laughed himself hysterical. And so this morning, I want to use for a subject, true love runs deep. What we find often is that the people who claim to be the closest to us will often turn on us. We find that folks who say that they have our backs when push comes to shove and when things begin to happen, they definitely will turn on you. I don't know about you, and some of you might have had a childhood friend you met at school or someplace else, and you guys were thick as thieves. You did everything together. And then as you began to matriculate through school, maybe they got a chance to start hanging with the cool kids, and all of a sudden they act like they didn't know you. And so you learn from an early age that you can't trust everybody. And then as you got older and you made yourself, got to be a young person, you found this person you thought they were the greatest thing since sliced bread and peanut butter. Oh, they were cute, they were handsome, oh, they looked good, they smelled good, they were the sun, moon, and the stars. But then when you begin to, you talk to them all the time, you text each other, you called each other, but now when you call, they're real short on the phone and they don't have time to talk to you. Or when you text them, before they used to respond back immediately, and now you don't get a respond back till later on that afternoon or maybe 2 days later. And you come to realize that the one you love is now loving somebody else. It's hard to trust folks. And maybe this happened to you on a job, and you had somebody who was your friend. Y'all ate together, you talked to each other, you hung out together, both in work and out of work. And something happened to where the job thinks that you did something that you did not do. And so you turn to that friend and you say, you know that I didn't do that. Could you stand up and speak on my behalf? And the day they were supposed to come to speak, all of a sudden they got sick and couldn't make it to work that day. Or when they went in there to talk to the boss, they said they didn't know anything about the situation. And so what has happened to a lot of us, because of how fickle and how turncoat people are, our love for people doesn't seem legitimate. And the worst place to experience some fickle and fake love is in the church. Because if we're honest, the same goes on in the world that goes on in the church. We have people who come to the church not because they actually want to find love, not because they actually want to engage with Jesus Christ. They come here because this church will get me the social connections I need to get where I want to go. I heard a story of a politician that was a full-on atheist but joined the church because he knew having the backing of the church would help him get elected. And that's not the thing. Some of us come to church not because we want to love and serve Jesus. We come to church because we just need something to do on Sunday mornings. This is our social interaction. This is how we actually meet people. It's hard to meet people when you're an adult, but guess what? You're in a church. You're forced to be around each other for at least an hour every Sunday. Now I can go make friends. For us introverts, we're like, I can avoid all that. But the point I'm trying to make is sometimes, and some of us have experienced fake love in the church. And if we get to our text, we see that love isn't always real. Now we have a character here named Judas. Most of us know Judas because Judas is known for betraying Jesus Christ. And so Judas is sitting there with Jesus at the Last Supper. And up until this point, a lot of stuff has happened in Jesus' life in the Gospel of John. He had went and raised Lazarus from the dead, then went to Lazarus' house and had dinner with the once dead man. He had triumphantly came into Jerusalem, and he was being pestered by the Jews to give them signs and wonders. And you know how we have people nowadays that said, I believe in God if he just shows me a sign. And the fact that you're breathing at this moment is a sign of his existence. Because you didn't choose that. Something had to spark that in you. And so Jesus had the Last Supper. He had washed his disciples' feet. And he explained to them that somebody's going to betray him. I think Robin Williams has a skit where he's like, is it me, Jesus? Oh, no, it's not you. Is it me, Jesus? No, John, it's not you. Judas, is it me, Jesus? Is it me, Jesus? You know, the point being, Jesus knew he was going to betray him because he says, the one that I feed is the one who's going to betray me. He feeds Judas and tells him to go do what you're going to do. Now, if we're being honest with ourselves, Jesus is a lot better than most of us. Because how many of you would feed the person that you know is getting ready to betray you? How many of you would have hung out with Judas knowing that he had every intention of bringing you down? Some of us have Judases in our families. Some of us have Judases in our friend group, and we deal with them like we say in the South. We feed that devil with a long wooden spoon. But Jesus intentionally loves the person who is going to cause his death. And that is because in Christianity, our love cannot be predicated on our situation. It has to be tied to our love for Christ. Because when you love God, you can love some people who seem unlovable. When you love God, you can deal with some folks other folks can't deal with. When you love God, you are willing to go through some things with people that other people say, I don't know why you would do that. It is because of the Christ love in me. If we truly love Jesus, our love needs to run deep for everybody. Not just for the people who can do stuff for us, not just for the folks who can help us push us along our career, but we need to love the folks who the world would turn their back on. So how do we love past all these hurdles in life? Point number one, we have to understand there's some distance. Now in the text, notice that Judas receives the bread and he walks out into the darkness. I noticed that John pointed out that he was going to betray Jesus and he leaves the light for the darkness. Some folks we interact with are walking in darkness. It's not because they are truly evil or anything like that. They just don't know any better. And some people know better and are still doing wrong. But our love for them cannot change just because they choose to distance themselves. Notice, Judas makes the decision to leave where Jesus is and go and betray him. We often want to, some people, I've heard some scholars, and there's some texts out there that try to excuse Judas' behavior, but where his part lies in, even if he's tempted by the enemy, he still makes the choice to go do it. We like to blame everything on everything else. I know people like, well, you know, because I'm this zodiac sign, I tend to do this. Okay. Oh, you know that because I'm this ethnic group, I tend to act like this. Miss me with that. You telling me Jesus isn't greater than your zodiac sign? Jesus isn't greater than your ethnic identity in the sense that you just act a certain way? The whole interaction with Christ should cause a shift and a change in your personality. If you're still doing the same thing you were doing 10 years ago and you've been in the church, obviously you just been sitting in the church, but you ain't letting the church get in you. And so Judas walks out into the darkness. And so what happens is, one of the things we do wrong is we spend so much time worrying about the people who distance themselves than the people who are still next to us. Because notice, Jesus doesn't dwell on Judas leaving. He takes time to turn and talk to his disciples. Some of us get so mad when people leave, we forget about the folks who stayed. We get so mad about the folks who betrayed us, we forget about the folks who were loyal to us. And so Jesus begins to talk to his disciples who had stayed, and he tells them, he says, the Son of Man is going to be glorified. And what Jesus is talking about, his death, his crucifixion, death, and resurrection was getting ready to happen. That's how he was going to be glorified. The cross is a paradox, because Jesus gets closer to God by going through the things of God. And what he points out is when he gets glorified, God will be glorified. The way God will show people that Jesus is who he says he is when he gets laid in that grave and death can't hold him. When death can't conquer him, that lets everybody know that he is who he says that he is. And sometimes we have to go through some things so we can show that God is who he is in our lives. And so he says that if God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son himself. He's showing the nature of their relationship as he grows and as he gets glorified. And as he goes through, God gets to return the distance of man back to himself. Man chose to distance himself from God. This is why people call the Bible an ultimate love story, because God didn't want us to stay distant from him. He sent his only son to die on the cross so he can return us back into relationship with him. And so point number 2, we have to understand our destination. Jesus says, my children. I can imagine the tone of the conversation shifting, and he gets soft when he talks to him. He says, I'm only going to be with you a little while longer. In other words, he knows that Judas is on his way to betray him. He knows that the cross is right here. He knows what he's getting ready to go through. And he says, I wish I could be with you a little while longer. He calls them his children because he's operating like a father, as a protector, and as somebody who wants to guide them. And he's letting them know that I got to tell you this, I can't be here much longer. And where I'm going, you cannot go. You can't go and bear this cross. You can't go and do this. I have to do this. And so oftentimes we mess up because we want to operate like Jesus. We think we can save folks. You can't save a soul, but you can point them to the person who can. And that's your goal. The goal of our loving people is to point people to Jesus, not that we have the expectation that we are going to fix things. And point number 3, we have to learn how to disciple. So Jesus says, a new commandment I give you. Love one another. Now, this wasn't a suggestion. This wasn't a good thought. He calls this a commandment. Now remember, he's talking to primarily Jewish men and women. So he's saying, let me add something else to the Mosaic law. There was like 600 laws. Let me add another one. He says, love one another. Now, the Greek word used here for love is agape. Now, the Greeks had multiple words for love. Like we call everything love, but they had multiple words. The love between a husband and a wife in a more physical, sexual manner, that's eros. The love between between two brothers, that's philo. Why you think Philadelphia is called the city of brotherly love. The love between a parent and a child is storge. But this love, agape, is self-sacrificial love. This is the love we can offer to anyone. This love is inconvenient. This love requires you to get out your bed when you don't feel like it. This love requires you to go through your closet and donate shoes even though you want to keep hold of all of them. This love requires you to go and do some things that sometimes you don't want to do. Because self-sacrificial love is how the world knows that you truly are a Christian. Now, people say, oh, you can't tell me if I'm a Christian and this, that, and the other. But I should see some agape love coming out of you every so often. Just because I go buy business cards and say I'm a car salesman doesn't mean I'm a car salesman. You should see me on a car lot at some point in time selling a car, right? The point I'm trying to make is that agape love runs deep. That agape love is what Jesus is demonstrating to his disciples, because he's getting ready to go to the cross. He's getting ready to suffer and die on their behalf. And he's telling them, everyone, you'll know that you will follow me because you love sacrificially. One of the challenges in the church is we love at a distance. I love you until it becomes inconvenient to me. I'll do for you until it becomes inconvenient for me. I'll give you a ride as long as I'm going to work. Don't think I'm getting up on my day off to take you to work. You better catch the bus, Uber, something. But true love, the love of Christ, is self-sacrificial. Not expecting to get anything back, not expecting folks to pat you on the back and tell you did a good job. I know so many people leave churches because they never recognized me for all the stuff that I did. Are you doing it for the pat on the back of man? Are you doing it because God sees it and he loves you? I hope there's some stuff that I do for people nobody finds out until I'm well gone. Because I don't need the pat on the back of people. I just need Jesus to know that I'm doing the right thing. And so this reminds me of a story. It's a story told of a desert village that had 2 wells, and there was one well that was in town, and it would collect rainwater, and so a lot of people would go to that well. But there was another well that was way off in the distance, and it was across the desert. But this and so most people drank from the well that was closer to the town. And so after a while, everything was going fine until there became a drought, and when the drought came, the rainwater started to dry up. And so the people started fighting one another, getting mad at one another, and even hurting one another because everybody was trying to hoard water for their particular family. Except for this one lady named Leela, because what was happening is because they were fighting so much over the water in town that the children and the older folks weren't getting water. And so what she decided was she was going to get up every day and walk to the further well. So every day she cut across the desert to the far well. And she would fill it up and she would drag this bucket back and she could barely hold it. And she would come back, she'd be burnt by the sun, but she would give the people who were less than some water. So one day, a gentleman named Omar sees her and he says, "Why are you doing this? You should just focus on your family. You should just focus on your people because, come on, why are you cutting across this desert every day for these people?" And Omar had been injured in a fight trying to get water from the other well. He was one of the strongest people in town, but he was injured. His arm was all jacked up in a sling. And when Leela hears this, she just looks at him. She takes the dipper and she dips the water out of her bucket and she offers Omar something to drink. And she tells him, she says, and Omar tastes the water and he's like, "Oh man, this tastes different. So why does this water seem so much better than the water we get from the well?" And she said, "Well, the water we get from the other well comes from rain. And now that it's drying up, all of you are fighting. But the other water is fed through an underground reservoir, and it's never going to dry up. And I would rather the people know that there's water that runs deep that will never dry up." The moral of the story is, you can give people water from the well of kindness, and kindness is going to dry up. But when you go to that deep well of the love of Christ, it'll sustain you forever. My brothers and my sisters, the whole point of this series was to point out that in order for us to truly do life together, we have to be willing to love one another. Let me tell you something. Loving people is hard. Those of you who've been married for a while, you know, loving folks is hard. Right? It's rough. Because there's some days when you like, this is my, that's my person. The other days, I could just strangle you. My wife always jokes and says that you haven't truly been in love until you plotted somebody's murder. But then you watch First 48 and was like, nah. See? I'm sure she's plotted mine multiple times. But the moral of the story is, what do we want to be? Do we want to be people who just give people the water of kindness? Or do we want to go to that well that runs deep inside of us, that never stops? All of us have the opportunity to give people some holy water. But it's going to cost you something. It's going to be inconvenient. It's going to be time consuming. But it's going to give God the glory. Amen. Amen, and amen.